Mandami seems like a nice guy, and I congratulate him on an extraordinary political achievement. But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, lady? One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won. In districts, Trump also won. All moderates.
Bill Maher is unloading on Democratic Socialists, and he doesn't hold back. The outspoken host goes straight for the jugular, accusing the faction of dragging the Democratic Party toward a dangerous ideological edge while trying to reshape America into a full-blown socialist experiment. His critique is sharp, relentless.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
Maher wastes no time, opening with a direct attack on Bernie Sanders, one of the most vocal champions of democratic socialism. Sanders has long promoted single-payer health care as the solution to America's broken system. But Maher points to a real-world test case, Vermont, a deep blue state where the plan should have succeeded. Instead, it collapsed under its own weight, too expensive, too complex, and ultimately unworkable. To Maher, this wasn't just a local failure. It was a warning sign. Democratic socialism, he argues, sounds great in speeches, wrapped in promises of fairness and universal care, but often falls apart when it meets economic reality. Applause is easy.
And this is against why people sometimes, I think, question some of what you're saying. This is a survey, student loan forgiveness recipients. 73% of applicants say they are likely to spend their extra money on non-essential, including vacations, smartphone, drugs, and alcohol. They admitted that to the pollster.
Who is this pollster?
NBC News. 52% they are very likely to buy new clothing. 46% they would use the money for vacation and eat out at restaurants. This is why people have a thing about, I would never call it free money, like I say.
Maher also takes aim at how Sanders responds when confronted with uncomfortable facts. Asking for sources isn't wrong, he admits it's part of debate. But Maher argues that those sources often reflect what everyday Americans already believe. When given a choice, most still lean toward capitalism over socialism. They value flexibility, incentives, and control over their own earnings. Maher suggests that when money is distributed without structure or accountability, it often fuels short-term consumption instead of long-term productivity. That, he argues, is where theory collides with human nature and why broad public skepticism towards sweeping socialist policy.
I know the kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's socialism for the 21st century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century, a mess. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest.
From critique, Maher shifts to history. Socialism, he argues, isn't some untested idea. It's been tried repeatedly, often with troubling results. He points to countries like Venezuela, Cuba, and North Korea as modern examples where heavy state control coincided with economic collapse, shortages, and restricted freedom. Venezuela, once among Latin America's wealthiest nations, spiraled into hyperinflation and dysfunction. Cuba continues to struggle under a state-dominated system marked by stagnation and scarcity. North Korea remains one of the most tightly controlled economies on Earth. Maher's takeaway is blunt. When theory meets reality, the results are often...
I think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism, but the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more.
Here, Maher pivots to a more nuanced point. America, he argues, is fundamentally capitalist, but it already incorporates selective social safety nets to soften the system's roughest edges. Public programs and basic protections exist to keep people from falling through the cracks. But balance matters. Push too far toward full-scale democratic socialism, and the engines that drive innovation, productivity, and personal ambition begin to weaken. Maher paints a stark picture. Looser border enforcement straining national security, heavier government control over resources, and fewer real choices for consumers. In that world, shortages become normal, expectations shrink, and daily life means settling for less. He even evokes images of long lines in the heat, waiting for basic goods like bread or milk. His warning of...
It's either defund the police or military in the streets. Either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores. No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods.
Maher flatly rejects the push toward democratic socialism, arguing that what most voters actually want is far simpler. A system where hard work is rewarded and people trust they'll keep a fair share of what they earn. Capitalism's appeal, he says, isn't just wealth. It's incentive, ownership, and the belief that effort leads somewhere. He frames it as a fairness question. Why should those who take risks and build something carry an ever-growing burden for others? Maher warns that excessive redistribution erodes motivation and breeds resentment. In his blunt view, pouring everyone's effort into a massive collective without clear limits dulls productivity, and that's not compassion. It's a recipe for...
Governor-elect Spanberger once said about Biden's presidency that, quote, nobody elected him to be FDR. They elected him to be normal. Normal! You know, at this year's DSA convention, or as it's commonly known, Comic-Con, get this, you had to submit a photo of a negative COVID test to get in. In 2025. Yeah, no one wants to do that again.
Maher then issues a clear political warning. If Democrats fail to distance themselves from the party's most hardline democratic socialist voices, he believes they could be headed for trouble in 2028. Voters, he argues, are increasingly frustrated by policies that feel overbearing, impractical, and disconnected from daily life. Elections are decided by the middle, not the extremes. And if the party becomes associated with ideas that complicate people's lives rather than improve them, it risks alienating a decisive share of the electorate. For Maher, this isn't just ideology, it's perception. Ignore the shift, and 2028...
This election is taking place when we have an administration in Washington which every day is moving us toward an authoritarian society.
This is America, New York City. Don't let them tell you any different. Don't let them tell you that we are the exception. We are the rule.
ring out so loud tonight that Andrew Cuomo can hear them in his $8,000 a month apartment. New York is not for sale.
Maher points to figures like Zoran Mamdani, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Bernie Sanders as leading voices pushing the party further left. Mamdani, in particular, has gained traction in New York City by campaigning on bold progressive reforms and translating them into local victories. Maher argues that these wins have emboldened others to follow the same playbook, but he sees danger in that strategy. What works in a deep blue urban stronghold doesn't necessarily translate across a diverse national landscape. Treating a localized victory as a national blueprint, he warns,
Mamdani seems like a nice guy, and I congratulate him on an extraordinary political achievement. But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, ladies?
that leads to Maher's comparison of two political paths. In Virginia, Abigail Spanberger took a very different approach, openly distancing herself from democratic socialism and warning voters about its risks. That message resonated with moderates and independents, helping her secure a win. Meanwhile, figures like Mamdani have succeeded by leaning into socialist-style policies in cities like New York. Both strategies have produced victories, but in very different environments. Spanberger's message to party leadership is clear. What works in one region may fail.
At least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won in districts Trump also won, all moderates. This isn't rocket science. All the left-leaning think tanks have done autopsies on 2024, and they all came up with the same message: move to the center. Even the New York Times, which did so much to promote woke politics, now says the partisans are wrong. Moving to the center is the way to win.